Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take the sources you send us and really dig into the most interesting bits.
Yep.
So today, let's maybe set aside what you think you know about the big Andean names for a second. We're going way back, like 2,000 years before the Inca. We're looking at the Chavín Society, modern-day Peru.
And our sort of mission for this deep dive, based on the research we've looked at, is tackling this question. How did the Chavín elite actually get power and, crucially, keep it?
Right.
Because the sources suggest it wasn't just, the usual story of farming getting better or trade routes opening up. Something else was going on.
Exactly. And that's something else that seems to involve, well, altered states of consciousness, which is pretty mind-bending when you think about how it might shape a social hierarchy.
Definitely surprising.
Okay, so let's get into it. The Chavín culture, they pop up really early, challenging environment, but they manage to unify different areas.
Yeah, through this shared art style, huge architecture, similar materials across regions. That's quite an achievement back then.
It really is. And it's important, like you said, not to think of them as simple. They were good farmers, amazing craftspeople, they traded.
All the things that usually lead to, a more complex society taking shape, more layers.
But there's this other factor, maybe less obvious, but wow, potentially really powerful.
Which is where this new study comes in. It's pretty groundbreaking.
Yeah, archaeologists found the earliest direct proof of psychoactive plant use in the Andes, right at Chavín de Huántar, the main site.
And they found these ancient snuff tubes.
Snuff tubes, and where they found them is key, isn't it?
Exactly. These weren't just lying around. They were inside the big monumental stone buildings.
Wow.
These tubes carved from hollowed animal bones, often quite beautifully done. Finding them there suggests these were important places, maybe sacred. The objects mattered.
And the science behind it is incredible. They did chemical tests, looked under microscopes, and they found traces of nicotine, probably from wild tobacco relatives, and, this is the big one, residue from vilca beans.
Vilca, which contains compounds related to DMT.
Right, a powerful hallucinogen, known for, well, intense visions.
And this is so significant because, look, we've had hints before, right? Artistic depictions, other clues suggesting psychoactives in the Andes.
Sure.
But this is the first time we have actual physical proof of the substances themselves this far back. It gives us a solid link.
It really opens things up. We know what they were using, potentially. Now the question is how.
And this is where the Chavín seem maybe a bit different from some other ancient cultures you might think of.
How so?
Well, sometimes you see evidence suggesting hallucinogen use was more communal, maybe for larger groups.
Okay.
But here, the evidence, the context where they found these tubes, points to something much more exclusive.
Like private ceremonies.
Exactly. Those rooms inside the big stone structures, they weren't big plazas. They seemed designed for just a few people.
So controlled access, that feels important.
Very. It suggests only a select group got to participate in whatever these rituals were.
There's a quote from Daniel Contreras, one of the researchers. He put it really well.
Oh, yeah.
He said, taking psychoactives was not just about seeing visions. It was part of a tightly controlled ritual, likely reserved for a select few, reinforcing the social hierarchy.
That nails it, doesn't it? The reinforcing the hierarchy part.
It does. It links the practice directly to power.
So if we circle back to our main question about how the elite maintained power, these rituals weren't about everyone having a spiritual trip together.
Well,
it seems more like they were designed to create maybe an air of mystery, to bolster the authority of the insiders, the elite.
you can kind of imagine, can't you, the effect on people outside those rooms, hearing about or maybe just sensing these intense, perhaps terrifying experiences the leaders were having inside these massive, maybe intimidating buildings.
Yeah, the idea that the elite had a special connection to a powerful, maybe unpredictable, supernatural world.
And that seems to be the point.
Yeah.
Controlling access meant they could frame themselves as the intermediaries.
The only ones who could safely navigate that world, maybe.
Exactly. Convincing everyone else that their leadership wasn't just political, it was essential. Tied to the cosmos, the natural order.
Contreras had another quote on that, didn't he? About this supernatural world not being necessarily friendly.
Yes. He said, the supernatural world isn't necessarily friendly, but it's powerful. These rituals, often enhanced by psychoactives, were compelling, transformative experiences that reinforce belief systems and social structures.
Compelling, transformative experiences, that's key. It wasn't just abstract belief, it was a visceral experience, but only for some.
So it's shaping the very ideas that justify why some people are in charge and others aren't.
Which brings us right back to how social classes might have started to really form there. It wasn't just about who had more llamas or corn.
Right.
Controlling these powerful, maybe sacred experiences, that was a form of wealth, of capital in itself.
And it wasn't just the drugs, apparently. The archaeology shows other elements, too.
Like the trumpets.
Yeah, trumpets made from huge conch shells, found in those same ceremonial areas.
And the rooms themselves seem deliberately designed. Acoustics.
To enhance sound? To make music or maybe chanting more powerful? Creating a whole sensory package?
Right. It's a multi-layered performance, really. Contreras talks about this as ideology.
Let me see. Here. One of the ways that inequality was justified or naturalized was through ideology, through the creation of impressive ceremonial experiences that made people believe this whole project was a good idea.
Made people believe. It's about buy-in, not just force. And just for the record, this study came out in PNAS May 5th, 2025.
So tying it all together, this discovery, this interpretation, it helps solve a bit of a puzzle about Chavín de Huántar, doesn't it?
It really does, because the site seems to represent this shift from earlier societies in the Andes that might have been more egalitarian towards the later big empires with very clear elite rulers. Chavín sits in that transition.
And this controlled access to mystical or altered states, it seems like a potential mechanism for that shift.
A key factor, yeah. Not just slow evolution, but maybe deliberate actions involving these exclusive rituals.
It just shows how much we can still learn.
Yes.
Years and years of digging.
Decades, really. John Rick's long-term project there has been crucial.
Combined with these new scientific techniques. Analyzing residues, understanding acoustics.
It gets us closer. As Contreras said, it's exciting that ongoing excavations can be combined with cutting-edge archaeological science techniques to get us closer to understanding what it was like to live at this site.
It really is exciting. So, okay, the big takeaway from this deep dive.
For me, it's that the Chavín elites seem to have very cleverly used these potent hallucinogen-fueled rituals, kept them exclusive, and used that exclusivity to build and support an ideology of their own power, their own right to rule. It's a unique window into how social complexity developed in the Andes.
A really fascinating strategy. It definitely makes you think, though.
How so?
Well, you consider how belief systems and maybe carefully managed experiences, even without the vilca beans, still shape our world today. How perceptions of authority are built, how social structures are maintained. Makes you wonder, what are the modern rituals, maybe less obviously mystical, that might be doing similar work in our own societies? Something to chew on.
Definitely something to think about.